Here is the display of the Yamaha Mach 6 synth workstation, and we have a pattern here with two sections. We're on section A right now. Both of them are recorded at 140 beats per minute, as section A has 4 measures to it. So let me play that so you can hear what that sounds like. Now in the 4th measure it's going to go back to the 1st, and it will just keep repeating like that. Now we'll go to section B, which only has 2 measures. And section B is sort of a little turnaround with a different chord. The section A is just back and forth between a G minor and a C ninth, and this one is going to go up to a D seventh. So that's all this is going to be, with a little turnaround with a little drum roll at the end. And that's it. It's right back and repeating itself again. So back to section A, and the way we would typically use this on the RC-300 when we're playing live is like this. We might start out with section A and typically let it play at least 2 times through, but more typically with something like Evil Ways, we might play it actually up to 4 times through or something like that. I can't remember what it is, but whenever you want to, you can switch over to the little turnaround. And I'm going to let it run 1 time through here again, and then we'll hit 4. I'm going to switch over to B and back to A. So whenever we wanted to, we would switch over from the regular A section to the B section right here, and back and forth. So what we want on the RC-300 is the versatility to have each one of these patterns, or each one of these sections of this pattern, in a different track, so that we can switch whenever we want to at the end of one to the beginning of the next. And of course, in order to do that, we need to run the RC-300 in single track mode. But first, let's get this pattern up into the PC so that we can work with it. I've run the left and right stereo channels of the synthesizer into my A to D converter. And out of the back end of this, there's a USB connector that's connected to the computer. Since I'm going to be running the DAW on this side of the desk and the synthesizer is really not conveniently available to me at this point, I can just set up the synthesizer and then use the foot pedal to start and stop the play mode on the synth. You could use any kind of DAW. I'm using the PreSonus Studio One producer. First thing we want to do with the new song setup is set up the beats per minute to what we recorded the patterns at, which was 140. So we change that to 140 beats per minute, which changes our time scale across the top. Next thing we want to do is we want to create a track and name it. I'm going to name it track A, and this is going to be a stereo pair. And we want to monitor that track, and we want to record in that track. And we want to test to see if we're able to hear our audio coming in correctly. I'm going to set up the console here with the F3 button, and I can see that I've set both the master and the individual channel volumes up so that we're not getting any distortion or any kind of getting into the orange or the red zone. So that looks good. I am going to start the recording on the DAW, and then I am going to start the synthesizer with the foot pedal. First thing I want to do is make sure that that stereo pair is set to record, and I'll start the recording now, and then I will start the audio. Now you'll notice that it's not in sync with the metronome, which is perfectly fine. And we've gone through one pattern now, so I can stop it. And I can stop the input. Now I will stop the recording. So now we have on track 1, we have the stereo pair of pattern A. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new track, and we're going to do exactly the same thing for pattern B. Okay, I've gone over and set up the synthesizer to run section B of the pattern. I've created a new stereo track here which I call B. I've set this up to record. I've muted the first track so that we won't hear that playing in the background while we're recording. So what I'm going to do now is exactly the same thing I did with the first track, and that is start the DAW, have it record, and then once it is started I will start the audio, and once it's gone through its loop one time we can stop. So let's start the recording and then we'll start the audio, and we've gone through the loop one time so we can stop here. And then we'll stop the recording. And you can hear the metronome, and you can hear it's not in sync with the metronome. Nothing is aligned right now. So what we want to do is we want to find the first beat, which is going to be right in here on the first track, right here on the second track. And we want to get that to line up so that when we listen to it, it lines up not only visually, but the audio lines up with the metronome. So we can run the metronome, and we can use the metronome after the fact to align these tracks correctly. Now let's align these two tracks so that they fall right on the first beat of the measure. And the easiest way to do that, I think I'm going to work on the second track, the shorter, the 2 measure loop. And what I'm going to do is rather than trying to bring it up from the left here, I'm going to figure out where the audio starts, and then I'm just going to find a nice beat marker over here. I'll probably use beat number 2 since that's the first one that it encounters actively. First of all, let's find the beginning. I've got track number 1 muted. I'm just going to be listening to track number 2, and I'll just, there's our metronome. And here's where our sound starts, right about in here. So what I want to do then is I want to bring the beginning of this audio, I'm going to align it over here to this second measure mark. So let me just grab it and drag it over. And of course what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to expand our view of this. So let me open it up a little bit so that it's a little bit bigger up there. But also if I double click on the audio of this track, now I have a nice view of it, what's happening down here. I can take my cursor and I can set it down here right on the second beat, which is actually going to end up being the first beat. And now I can find, see if I can set the beginning of the track here right on a beat. So it's missing it by, I don't know, maybe a couple milliseconds in there or something like that. So as you can see, I'm jumping on one side and then the other. I can't really align it correctly. So let me come up here and turn off my snap and see if I can get it a little bit closer. That's not doing it either. So what I'm going to do up here is under Quantize, I'm going to come over to the 1/32. Now I have much more control, and I'm going to align this first beginning part of this audio right on that beat mark right there. Okay, now I'll turn my snap back on and I'll go back to my 16th note quantization. And now what I want to do is I want to cut this second track right here. So all I do is I find my cutting tool. Let me get rid of this bottom part now. And I hit my Alt-X and I cut it right here. Now I've cut that, and I will delete this part. And if I mess up, I can always just go back to my pool of files or reload the original in. So let's do this. Let's just leave it right there, and then let's listen to our metronome and see if we're aligned. We'll go back to the beginning. So we'll have a 1 count in, 1 measure count in, and then let's see if we're aligned or not. Sounds pretty good. Okay. Now we need to trim it down so we just have 2 measures, which will be extremely easy because now we have it aligned. I will come up here and cut that and delete the end of that. So now what we can do, I could actually set up a loop here and test it. Let's come over here 2 to 4. And let's test that. My loop's not active here. Let me activate the loop. Now we go. Sounds pretty good to me. Now we need to do the same thing to the first track, which may go as easily or may not. We'll just have to see. Okay, so I've soloed track 1, and so track 2 is muted, and gotten the cursor over here to the 0 point, and let's start and see where our audio begins on track number 1. Right about there. So it's right about the second measure and the second beat of the second measure. So you notice that because of the way that I started the recording, and it didn't really matter, that I had I had these 2 different tracks starting at different times, and we knew that we were going to have to sort it out afterwards with the metronome. That's fine. So let me open up this, and I think we really lucked out because it seems like it's falling right on a beat right there. Now I could probably move it over a couple of milliseconds, but your ear won't hear that. So we really lucked out here. You might have to move this back and forth a little bit like we did before, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it right there, right up here. I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to move it over, and we're going to align it with this and see if they're both matched up perfectly with the metronome. So let me cut this right here. This is an Alt X on this DAW, and I will delete that section. And we'll move this over to the beginning of beat 2. Now these are going to be out of harmony with each other if I run them at the same time. I have to think about how to handle that. So let me get rid of this lower audio section here and go back to the mixing console. Now we know that the first measure is 4, the fourth loop is 4 measures long, so we want to go from 2 to 6. So if I put my marker right there, I can come over here and delete, I can cut that and delete that part. So now let's take our loop and let's run our loop over here to measure 6. So we're running between 2 and 6. And let's activate the loop and let's start the audio, see what it sounds like. We're only going to be listening to track 1. Sounds good to me. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to the second track. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn them both on. And even though we wouldn't be playing it like that, I can hear that they're both running right in time. So we have now aligned our 2 tracks so that they can be downloaded to the 2 different tracks in the RC-300, and they will be correct. Now, just as an afterthought, remember on this Masquerade when I downloaded that and there was a delay at the beginning? The reason that is because there was a delay in the audio on the original file that I did on the DAW, so that when I started a YouTube video, it wouldn't start at the very first millisecond of the video. It would be a very slight delay and then it would start. So that's where that delay came in. And just like this delay right here. So what we can do with this, you see, is we can just move this whole thing over to the beginning, and we won't have any delay at all. So now they're both going to start right at the very first instant. Time to mix these 2 tracks down into 2 separate WAV files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute one and keep the other active, do one mix down, then I will reverse the process. So right now I've muted track number 2. Let's get back to the starting point. I want to export this as a, under song, I will say export mix down. Let's just give it a file name. This is kind of Evil Ways, so let's call this Evil 1. Evil 1. And then, if I could spell it would be good. Evil 1. Okay. So format. It defaults to MP3, not what we want. We want WAV. Resolution, all that stuff is going to basically be fine. We just need to make sure that we only record what we need to or mix down what we need to, and export range is from the selected markers from start to 2, which is correct. And this is only 6.8 seconds long. Okay. Okay, so there it is. Let's play it. So there's track 1. Now we want to mute track 1, unmute, or we could do a solo, it'd be the same thing. Want to move this marker over here to the 3 so that we have from 1, 2, 3, we have 2 measures. Now we want to do a song export mix down, and this is going to be called Evil 2. Where I got the wave format, and it's going to the desktop, and we're okay, and boom, it's done. So there's Evil 2. Let's listen to that. Okay, so now we have our 2 tracks sitting on our desktop as 2 wave files. Now we're going to download that to the RC-300 and see how that works. I have plugged my USB connector into the RC-300, and I've gotten my window popped up here that it recognizes the device. That's open in view files. There's our master upper level folder. Here are the 2 files that we just created that are going to be our track 1 and track 2 for memory location 33. So what we want to do is move these into the file structure of the RC-300. So let's open that up, and let's go down to the memory location 33 folders. And here they are right here, track 1, 2, and 3 of memory location 33. Now we know that we've already loaded into 33.1 the masquerade file. So what we can do is just delete that, and we can move Evil 1 into try to pick up both of them there. We'll just move Evil 1 into 33.1. So now that's loaded into track 1, and we need to go to track 2 of 33, which is of course empty because we hadn't loaded anything in there yet. And we move the second file into there. So now we are all set up. As far as the RC-300 is concerned, it already sees those files in its structure. So now all we have to do is unplug the USB connector on the RC-300, and it will load that information into permanent memory. Well, this is pretty much live television here, folks. It's kind of like when they opened up Al Capone's vault on live TV. Hopefully it'll turn out better than that did. So we're going to unplug our USB connector and watch the unit process the information that we have changed and incorporate it into its database. What it has to do, really, what it's doing here is it's writing that information from volatile memory into permanent memory, or EEPROM. That's why it takes so long. Okay, so here we are. We have, lo and behold, data in 2 of our tracks on memory location 33. So let's, now, first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we have our tempo set up. Oh, look at that. It already recognized what the tempo was just from the data. That's interesting. Okay, so let me exit that. And we're also going to have to set the machine up as single track mode, but that's okay, we can do that later. Right now we just need to test it. So let's test track 1, see what we got. Okay, so there's track 1. We'll stop that. And there's track 2. So it worked. Okay, just to tie down some loose ends, I know I cover all this stuff in other videos, but just to finish up here, let's give it a name. So we come over to the memory edit button, press it 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and now we can edit the name. Okay, so we've given it a name, and we will exit that. We could save it now, but we'll save everything all at one time. let's set it up as a single track mode so that we can really test it the way it's supposed to be used. And we'll go to Memory Edit, and we will press the right button 9 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we will come up to single track mode. We will turn that on, and we will go to the next location that, oh, there's the dog. Go to the next memory location, and it says memory track change immediately. We want it to change at loop end. Okay, so now we'll exit that, and now we'll save all this stuff. And let's give it a try here. I'm going to change some of the EQ settings on the amp, but let's give it a try here first. So it starts here, and if we want to, we go over here. It's waiting. Okay, playing that. So that's working. Playing that twice. Back to the beginning. Alright, so let's stop all. And now let's go over to the amp and see if we can make it sound a little bit fuller. Got my amp set up for to emulate a twin, Fender Twin, and I've got some reverb and some delay in there. So let me reach over here and start up the audio track. Then come back here, let me turn off the delay, turn off the reverb. And I'm going to start playing around a little bit here with some of the settings. Already sounds much better. So what it needed was a little bit less treble. See, it makes a huge difference. See that? It was getting that kind of stuff. It kind of needed to be. A lot of times the middle is effective. In this case, it's not so much. And let's try the bass. More volume. So I think might not be able to hear it through this cheesy little camera, but I believe that's a really nice full sound.